Welcome. We are now broadcasting on the interwebs. Everyone who's here. Woo! Thanks to all you guys who are here at MiiR Flagship online. You guys, thanks for tuning in. We are here at MiiR's Flagship in Seattle. It's our first MiiR Live, actually at our own flagship, which is really exciting. A little known secret, we've actually done this 3 or 4 times in a really small closet in some of our old offices. Our guest knows about those experiences, so they were fun times. We're excited that we've grown. We have this amazing space that we can share with you guys. We are serving coffee, beer. Sorry, digital world, we can't share with you, but you can come and visit us anytime. We'd love to have you guys. So, a couple things tonight. I just wanted to give a shout out to Glazer's Camera. Thanks so much to them. They're kind of the premier Northwest independent camera retailer, in part making this evening happening with all this awesome gear. Personally, I buy my equipment there. Part of it is just they're so knowledgeable about the equipment, so be sure to check them out. They have a new location in Soto coming out next year. So again, thanks to those guys for supplying some of the gear tonight. For everybody else, you can participate here. We will be doing a Q&A towards the end. You can pass the mic, you can ask questions. Internet world, you guys can also use the hashtag MiiRLive and put questions out there. Also, if you use the hashtag MiiRLive, just something that we've said that inspires you, we will be picking 4 lucky winners to win some awesome prizes throughout the evening. So that's something that you guys can participate here as well as online. So I think that's it for housekeeping. I'm really excited about tonight to feature our guest, who's one of my good friends, who's become a really good friend over the last 5 years as MiiR has grown. He started One Day's Wages, which is the main partner for us for our water projects and also our upcoming education projects with our bag line. So he is an author, humanitarian, pastor, father, husband. There's so many things that he does. I don't know how he does it. So let's welcome him on the stage and we'll get going with the conversation with Eugene. So Eugene, welcome. This one's for you. Right. Yeah, so you get your own bottle. There's water in there. But would you like anything? We can make coffee. We have 28 beers on tap.
It's a lot of pressure. Everyone's like standing.
I know. Like, what is he going to decide?
I would love. I haven't had my coffee for today.
Okay.
So extra hot vanilla latte, please.
Can you get that, Kevin?
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Man, what was it? 3 years ago we did this?
3 years ago in a small closet. I don't know. I just locked it away in memory somewhere. But, I do remember doing an interview with you somewhere.
Yeah, I think it was in Evo's old office downstairs. We rented a desk and then the storage closets where we actually produced the show. So we've come a long ways in 3 years. But yeah, getting right into it, I'm obviously inspired by the work that you do, and I think many people here and tuning in online are also inspired. But I'd love to figure out, I think one of the reasons for MiiR Live is having these conversations about people that inspire us and hopefully inspire others. But also, what are those secrets? How do you do all of those things that I listed? I mean, you're the author of a new book, Overrated, which we'll get into. You're a pastor in a new church that just moved to a bigger location. You're a husband, you're a father, and all these things. How do you sleep?
Yes, I do sleep. I'm turning 45 next month, and so I was telling someone earlier that I'm not able to do as many things as I used to be able to do 10 years ago. My energy level is, I think, been humbled in many ways. But I think a lot of it, there's just no one secret answer to that question. I think in seasons, some of the things that I've learned is that it's really important to learn how to say no, sometimes even to good things, so that you're able to say yes to the most important things. Yeah. And so as a 45-year-old man, married to my wife for about 20 years, we have 3 teenage children. One's graduating from high school this school year. I feel like crying right now live. And so I've been learning that, it's really important to learn about what your passions are. What's the most important thing in your life? Say no to even good things, which is really hard in our culture. And so this might sound crazy. I think one of the best leadership lessons for anyone is learning to say no, and not just learning to say yes. So everything that I'm doing are things that really matter to me. I can't do it all, and so I'm learning about what it means to find good people that resonate deeply with passion, certain value systems and then working together.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this before. There's this East African proverb that I love, and it goes like this: if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And so you have to learn who are the women and men that you want to partner together with in life, whatever the passions may be, and go far together.
Yeah, oh man, that's a good nugget right there. Learning to say no is so hard to do, especially as you get more and more busy. And then also, yeah, just picking the people that are around you, support you, is obviously super important.
Absolutely.
Man, that's good stuff. We're like 2 minutes in and there's already good stuff going on. How do you, so, I mean, you got 1 day's wages, the new church location.
Yeah.
You can't dunk anymore.
Yes.
With 1 day's wages, kind of get into that. Like, what was the? I mean, I think one thing I respect about you and he is that with 1 day's wages, it wasn't just this like spur of the moment, overnight success. You know, there's a lot of thought and planning. Like, give us some insight into like why start another nonprofit in the world of massive amounts of nonprofits.
Yeah. Why
1 day's wages, and kind of what was your passion for starting that?
Well, just in case there might be anyone online or here at the flagship that might not know much about 1 day's wages, you can check us online, onedayswages.org. We're on Facebook, all the social media stuff. Wearing my t-shirt for 1 day's wages as well. And 1 day's wages is a grassroots humanitarian organization that does work around global extreme poverty. Now, just for those who might not know what extreme poverty is, it's defined by the World Bank as now the 2.1, 2.2 billion people that survive on about 5 quarters a day, on about $1.25. So just in case people have some maybe hearing stuff, I said billion and not million with a B.
Yeah.
2.1, 2.2 billion people, and it's amazing to think that in our world today that this still exists. And I think I've always kind of wrestled with this in some ways as a human being, as a Christian, as a pastor. My parents were both born in what is now called North Korea. It's a long, crazy story, and so they were children of a war. And so they lived in really stark poverty. And so that's always informed the way that I see the world. And so I've always wanted to do something. But I've come to realize that, at least in my life, I became more enamored, more in love with the idea of wanting to do good things. And I think if we're honest, there might be someone here, someone watching, that might be a common story. That in our world of wanting to change the world, that phrase, anytime someone says the word change the world, they should pay a quarter. Right? Because it's a common phrase, and I think it's a good phrase, but in our almost ego, narcissistic world where we want to do good things, we have to maybe say that good ideas and good intent is not enough. And so we were kind of confronted by that notion. And if I can take you back about 9 years ago, I was visiting a country called Burma, otherwise known as Myanmar. You and I were there about 9 months ago. But I had a trip there about 9 years ago, and during that trip, we kind of snuck in through Thailand and visited a village through a town called Mesa, which is in Thailand. And we're talking about a village that was comprised of basically refugees who were fleeing away from a government that was trying to kill them. So when you talk to UN officials, some of the genocide that was going on in Burma was on the same scale as that which was going on in Darfur, but not in the same volume. Crazy, crazy stuff.
And that brought, like, nobody knew about it.
Well, no one knew about it. Yeah, even right now, because you and I were there, Myanmar has opened up. But there are some places in Myanmar that foreigners cannot go to.
Right, like northern on the border.
Right, that's right. And it's because they don't want people to know what's going on. And so, anyways, 9 years ago, we're visiting this particular village, and it didn't even have a name. It had a number, because they were constantly moving from place to place. And so, we're visiting a makeshift school. Yes, pause for a second. The story is important, but coffee is important too. Thank you so much.
I got a closer clicker. Too far.
So we're visiting this makeshift school in this village, And I was just appalled by a poster that was taped onto the chalkboard of this classroom. It was a classroom for 1st to 5th graders. There were about maybe 18 tables and chairs. Long story short, it was one of the most hideous, violent images I've ever seen with my own eyes. And it was a collage of photos of women, men, and children with missing body parts and blood oozing out of them. Now this is for a classroom for 1st to 5th graders. And the host, sensing I was disturbed, he actually tells me to come closer. So in his broken English, he says, Pastor Cho, come closer, come closer. And so with hesitation, I come closer, and he points to these bottom row of greenish contraptions, and he tells me, these are landmines. We must teach our children how to avoid landmines. So my heart was just broken, particularly after meeting some of the survivors. But it was that evening I learned that the salaries of the teachers in these schools, these classrooms, were $40. That's what one of the leaders told me. And so my initial response was, you meant $40 a day? And he laughed, really loud. I think he was saying, you silly, crazy, Western Asian man. And it wasn't per day. And I said, did you mean per week? And he again laughed. And at that point, I was shocked. I was like, there is no way that their salaries were $40 a month. Yeah. I asked, is it $40 a month? His face turned stoic. I think I've upset him. He shakes his head again. And it was $40 a year. That was the salaries of the teachers in this particular jungle village, if you will. Yeah. And so I'm not sharing that to make people feel guilty or ashamed, but just to say that as we're sitting here in this beautiful flagship campus, there is disparity in the world, and we can't just turn the other way. We have to do something. So it's that question. The subtitle of the book is, are we more in love with the idea of changing the world than actually changing the world?
Yeah, and it's a great question to ask, because I think if you guys haven't read the book and you don't win tonight, I'd say go to Amazon, the bookstore, purchase it. It's a great book. It's a great read. But it brings up a lot of questions about, is a tweet going to save the world? Is t-shirt evangelism actually doing anything? And then what to do about it. I think, kind of on the topic of the book and how it ties into One Day's Wages, I think the thing that I appreciate about you guys is that it wasn't just the story and that we did it. Dive in, if you will, to what you and Minhee and the rest of your family actually did to raise money for One Day's Wages. Because this is something where you're like, wait, what did you just do? Like, you did what? You asked your family to do what? And you guys did, I don't know. I don't have hats off to you.
Yeah, so a couple things. So we came away from this experience and thought, okay, we got to do something. So I thought maybe I'll write a blog post, host maybe a house party. Not that those things are bad.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for you and I to communicate to people, whether it's social media, wearing a t-shirt. I'm not suggesting that those things are useless or have no weight. I just think that if that's the totality of our action, then there's no sacrifice. It doesn't impact us or change us in some way. So I came back from that experience, shared this with my wife and kids, and so my wife, Minhee, who's a marriage therapist of all things, which means that she wins every argument at our home. And we were talking about this, and we decided as people of faith that we were going to spend some time praying about it. And lo and behold, this is awkward, but we were convicted to give up a year's wages. Now, I'm not sharing that to sound boastful or more holier than thou in any ways. It was just an honest conviction. Minhee was on board, because that's the way that she is, and I was not on board. It took me 3 years to kind of come to peace with that, because it took us 3 years to save as much as we could. We sold lots of stuff, including my midlife crisis car, my 1991 blue Mazda Miata, that I still very much miss. And we had to basically kind of live a lot more simply. And it wasn't just Minhee or I, it was our kids as well. We all bought in. But I will say this, it was a lot more challenging than we ever thought, because full disclosure, and I share it in the book, my salary as a full-time pastor is $68,000 a year. So it's not like we have $68,000 underneath our mattress. It took us a long, long time to save this, and There were some difficult choices and decisions that we had to make, including coming up short in finances and needing to move out of our home for about 10 weeks to sublet our home. And we were kind of couch surfing, visiting friends and say, hey, we love you. Can we stay with you for a little bit?
And you found out who your true friends were.
Yes, yes. And it was really challenging. And I'll say this, I think the lesson that I learned is when we're wanting to change the world, we want to do it because we want to help other people, we want to impact the world. I think the best part of wanting to change the world, no matter what our lens or worldview might be, is that you will be changed. I mean, you will be impacted. And so I feel much deeper and richer and blessed as a result of what we've gone through. But while we were going through it, it was very challenging. If you were interviewing us 6 years ago, you may have needed to bleep out a few words because it was a really hard, challenging season.
Man, I still think through like, how would I do that? And then how would I do that with kids? I'm like, I can't even
Well, our kids will need counseling at some point in the future, but my wife is a counselor, so we win. So
it's like, now the key is having a counselor that's not related to you. My dad was a psychologist, and again, I was never grounded. It was always, let's talk through the decisions that you made and why did you emotionally make that decision. It was like, oh my gosh, just ground me, okay?
That's a different interview.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole nother MiiR Live. Kind of touching on that cost of, what you do, and that, there's no cost to sending a tweet besides your, a quick 30 seconds. I'd love to kind of dive into like your thoughts on social enterprise, nonprofits, and like how is that cost measured? And I think one observation that we've made on the social enterprise side, because MiiR, for every product that we sell, there's a give, and it's great, but we want to make sure that we don't give the misconception that like the only way to change the world is to honestly to sell, and we don't have a beat button, but like to sell more crap. Like, it's just one of those things where the reality is, yes, we sell more MiiR product, there's more impact in the world, and that's great. But we also don't want to say like the only way to help people get clean water or a bike is to buy MiiR stuff, And I think social enterprise, it hasn't gotten a bad rap yet per se because it's still kind of trending, I think. But there's that temptation that like, oh, you have to buy something to change the world. And our intent, and I hope that we continue to do this, is that there's that impact, but then how do we invite people to do more?
Sure. To
whether it's volunteer with one day's wages or do a bike drive or actually get involved beyond just buying something, and
well, I would suggest, this water bottle is not the beginning and the end of changing the world. And if that's how we market it, then I think we're lying.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for the fact that that's not what you're saying, that there's a level of integrity in which how we're communicating our messaging, the vision of what you guys do. And same thing with one day's wages. We're not the first, and we will not be the last. And I'm grateful for that. Earlier, you asked, well, why start another nonprofit when there's so many?
Yeah.
And I would say that the issues of the world, whatever they may be, and they are deep and expansive, there's just so much that I'm not suggesting that everyone needs to start something. If we're honest, we live in a world today where a lot of people are tempted to start something. So we got to check our motivation. When I was growing up, like everybody, here in Seattle, it almost seems like everyone's in a band, and so everybody feels like they need to be I'm in a band and I'm not a musician, but I tell people I'm in a band. And so I feel like we're in that kind of culture right now where everyone's tempted or kind of enticed by, I'd like to start my own thing. Now, that's great. I think we have to check our motivation. And people ask me the question, why do you think you need to start another nonprofit? And part of it was because I felt like the issues are expansive, but there was something unique that we were trying to bring into the equation. Yeah. So we're grassroots. So in 6 years, we've been able to kind of invite over 20,000 people around the world to get involved. We've raised, we gave 1 year's wages, hoping to inspire people to give at least 1 day's wages, which is 0.4% of their income. So this 2 weeks ago, we surpassed $3 million.
$3 million.
$3 million in donations. So, yeah, and that's encouraging. And just, it's crazy because part of our model is 100% of donations that people give go directly to empower people living in extreme poverty. And then this is crazy. We have 2 staff.
I know.
Okay?
Every time you talk about this impact, it's like,
you know, when we expanded from 1 to 2, I was so happy to tell people. I tweeted, we just grew 100% in our staff. So we have 2 full-time staff. We've got a part-time accountant. We have people like your wife, Becca, who was a volunteer staff for several years before some husband started a flagship and enticed her into work as well. So we're really encouraged by what we've been able to do. But going back to the question about, I think we have to realize that what we're doing is not the totality. So whether it's social media, whether it's this event, is how do we encourage people to take steps deeper? And that it's not a kind of a one-time flashy deal, but a lifelong commitment of wanting to live with generosity, with kindness, a lifelong commitment of living out our values, if you will.
On that, the section of the book that I loved, that, I think that whole notion of like, I want to start something, I want to do something, and checking your motivation, I think is important. But I think the other thing too is that you see, and social media totally contributes to this, but this, everybody focuses on the Instagrams, the Toms, the whoever it is that blows up overnight. Usually it takes several years and people don't know the hard work that goes into it. But, these successes are celebrated, and there's 1,000 dead soldiers before them. And so, the part in your book about it being a marathon, and it's, man, I think, there were a couple things you said in here that were just, they just touched me, and I was like, this is right on, about that it should be about a marathon and not instant gratification. And that with that, there will be a cost. And that if you go into the battlefield of business or you're in the nonprofit realm, like there will be a price to pay, whether it's time, whether it's money, your ego, or just you put yourself out there, you will be criticized. And it can be difficult. But I think that notion of like making sure you understand that there is a marathon and that it's not a sprint. I have to, like our advisors at MiiR constantly have to say, Brian, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Don't think in months, think of years. And it's hard.
Yeah, if the goal is, hey, how do we use our lives to impact other people, locally, globally, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you want to have a successful business at MiiR, and that entails, moving merchandise from one place to another. But in it, somehow, you also want to impact the world. And I would say if our definition of impact is more about short-term, more about instant gratification, then I think we have to ask the hard question, is it about me? Like, is this ultimately about my, hero complex?
Yeah.
And if we're honest, I think every one of us, we struggle with this in some way. And if it's more about us and about elevating ourselves, then the most dangerous thing that we can do, whether it's social entrepreneurship, whether it's philanthropy, is we end up using some of the poorest people in the world as a means to elevate our work.
Yeah.
And that's a hard self-examination that we all have to ask. Sociologists, they call this, quote, the pornification of the poor. And it's a really, disturbing, but I think important question that we have to ask.
Yeah.
How do we use images? How are the stories that we tell? There's a Nigerian novelist by the name of Chimamanda Adichie. And for some of you guys who are watching who are big TED Talk fans, you may recognize her name. She gives an incredible, compelling talk. I'm going to actually give homework to your viewers here.
Perfect, I love
Go on TED, and there's this Nigerian novelist by the name of Chimamanda Adichie, and she gives a talk called The Danger of the Single Story. And I haven't memorized the whole thing, I've quoted it in the book, but she basically says that when we only give one particular perspective of someone's story, it's not that it's untrue, it's incomplete.
Right.
So if the only image that we're portraying happens to be of Africa, this whole country of many cultures and many languages and people, is only images of poor people, it does an incredible disservice. And in some ways, we end up reducing people into projects. And so it's a hard question. And I think one of the things that I appreciate about what you guys are doing is that you're trying to give depth to the stories that you tell, which explains why on your own dime, you joined us, in Myanmar to be and to sit on to sit in uncomfortable positions for days listening to the stories of some of these women and men and children of these villages in the Delta region in Myanmar.
Yeah, that was an incredible trip. And I think Davis, do you want to go? We put together a quick 2-3 minute video from that trip. Let's go to that now, and I think it's a good segue into our next topic. So we have a little treat for you guys. We'll get there.
Okay. Oh. We're actually in Myanmar right now to assess a partnership that we've agreed on along with World Concern. And I want to just ask Brian to kind of give you a recap because it's been an amazingly emotional but full experience so far. So from your perspective, what's been going on here?
So what we've been able to do in the past few days is go to a handful of villages around the Delta region and just sit down and meet the people who World Concern has worked with in the past and is also working with presently and will continue to work with in the future. And it's been incredible to see these communities actually be able to lift themselves out of really extreme poverty from the devastation of the cyclone. So it's been encouraging to meet these people, hear their stories, and to realize that in us coming alongside them, we're able to help where they need to, but ultimately they're able to support themselves by the end of the partnership, and that's what I'm so encouraged about, that it doesn't require us to be here forever.
I'm really humbled and excited by Brian's support and their partnership with MiiR. And I would love for anyone, especially for those who have companies and small businesses, to consider what it means to allow generosity to be a part of your company, your small business's culture and business model as well. So thank you again.
Thank you.
I rocked that bandana.
You did?
Yes.
It was like 95 right there on that shoot.
Yes.
Slow drifting down. It was pretty picturesque. It was nice.
Hey, let me just share this because I was wanting to share this in the beginning as I shared a little bit about our partnership. And in fact, not to suggest that you don't have a good handle on your books, because that's not what I'm saying. But even today, when I texted you, you were surprised.
Yeah.
And so in preparation for our interview today, I asked our accountant exactly how much money has MiiR invested as a result of their business model. And just from MiiR so far, and obviously this year, you guys are doing great. You guys have given, MiiR has given thus far to One Day's Wages water projects $114,339.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. No, that is amazing. So I told you I would kiss you live on TV. And so, and then just one more thing. I mean, I think there's a business model that I obviously respect and appreciate. But in the same manner, I think you and Becca, your wife, I mean, you guys have walked the walk as well. You guys have been so generous in many ways. There are MCs for the gala that we host every single year. It's coming up in a few weeks. We'd love for you guys to show up. But you guys have also done this thing called Climb for Water. And what they do is they gather a group of friends. And this past year you couldn't do it because you injured your knee, had knee surgery, you wimp. And but they've gathered a group of people and they've climbed Mount Rainier. How many years have you done it?
I think 4. Have we done it 4, Beck? Four years? Yeah. Okay. 3 or 4 years, yeah.
3 or 4 years. And so you've asked people to sponsor and give. And so out of that, you guys have raised $38,099. So in total, we're talking, you guys have given and raised over $150,000.
Wow. Yeah.
And you saw it yourself when we went to Myanmar.
Yeah.
I mean, it is impacting communities of people. So, you know, from our humongous staff of 2 people, our donors and volunteers, our board, and I really mean this sincerely. Thank you so much for your support, for your partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's, you know, I feel like we're just the vessel where, no pun intended, but you guys as our customers, you know, are really helping support that, you know, with not only the products that we sell, but the beer and coffee that we serve gives back to clean water too, which is exciting. So yeah, I mean, I feel, you know, somewhat privileged to be able to just be a part of it, you know, like it's not like us going out being like, we're the end all, you know, it's our customers making it happen. It's you guys making it happen. It's the partners on the ground. And then I think ultimately seeing those people on the ground, and then, I mean, some of those communities that we met with in those villages were, I mean, it was unbelievable. The amount of development that was happening on their own was, I mean, and maybe it's because my perception was off, but it was mind blowing. I mean, this one community we went to, they had some assistance for a school from Japan, but they were dirt roads, but mind you, the community had planted rows of bushes and flowers, and they were pristinely kept. And it was, I mean, they had people taking care of their own kind of dirt roads, and they had like 2 rice banks because they'd outgrown the other one, and they were lending it to their neighbors at 2%. I mean, it was quite inspiring to see that it wasn't this, Western man coming in and fixing it and leaving. It was more of, hey, we're coming alongside you, we'll help you with some concepts, and then, hey, you're on your own. So,
well, I think this is really good for you to highlight because, this whole idea, if we think this glamorized version of this Western person or company or organization coming in to do everything, it's a broken, defunct myth. It doesn't work. It's dangerous in many ways. But what we're seeing is that when healthy, good development work takes place, is that you identify local indigenous leaders and you work with them to be able to lift themselves out of poverty. They know their context, their culture the best. Earlier today, when I was just peeking on social media, I did see a question come in, so I'm going to just jump the board. But this person asked the question, in your opinion, Eugene, what's the most effective way to engage global issues? And my answer would be there is no singular most important way. You have to understand context and culture, and the best way to do that is to kind of learn through local leaders, if you will. And so, we were so encouraged because as you and I have seen and know, it's not because people don't know what to do. Oftentimes there's opportunities. There are some amazing people around the world doing some incredible things. And if we could, it'd be great to interview them, for example. But so inspired by them.
Well, the one village that I'm thinking of particularly, they had I guess you call it kind of a board for the community, and it was amazing. They had 9 men and 9 women, so equal gender representation. And together as a committee, they decided what they would do as a community to invest in next, whether it was a school, a church, a rice mill, and to see the level of respect that everybody had for one another, and that there were no, Western folks going in there and saying, hey, this is how you build a school, or this is how you do X, Y, or Z. We were simply providing some of the means, whether it was financial or training them. Because rewind, what was it, 06, or when was the cyclone Nargis, or was it 08? I always mix up the dates.
I think it was 07.
07. It was right in between. I mean, it was utter devastation. We would have villages that we visit where community of 500 people, and over half the people were swept away when the hurricane here, cyclone there, similar concept. So just the amount of devastation was unreal.
I mean, we've had so many meetings with villagers. There were 2 villages that I think we visited where about 85% of the entire community were killed in a flash, if you will. And even 7-8 years later, you could see some of that pain. People that are speaking about their parents or siblings in past tense. And in the midst of this, to see people rise up. It wasn't perfect, but to see them rise up was truly inspiring.
Well, there was this beauty and this brokenness too, because this one lady that we met, it was the same community where you had that giant fish that you caught. I still don't know how you caught that giant fish. I don't know if we have the photo of it, but it's on the social media, so you should check it out. But she was describing, we were asking her about her story, and she and her, I think they had gone through the formality of marriage, but this lady had lost 2 or 3 children and most of her community. And then another community after the cyclone surpassed, they kind of formed a new village, and she met this other man and essentially became a mom to like 4 other kids. And so, they were just trying to kind of put it together, and she was like, I'm doing this because I think it's the right thing to do to take care of these kids. I don't want them to go to an orphanage or have nobody taking care of them. So you saw these incredible stories of people just coming together and just, kind of getting after it, and there's no social media there. They're not like, selfie, like, hashtag look at me, hashtag saving 3 kids. They're just doing it. And I don't know, like my faith in humanity was restored seeing that people were doing things not for the benefit of like Instagram followers,
Their concept of community was what really inspired me. And something that I think we have to consider, like, what does that look like for us in an affluent city like Seattle, wherever people are watching this from, where the fastest growing communities are gated communities in the Western world. I think it's a really important question for us to say, what does it mean for us to not just live for myself, not just wanting to change the world elsewhere, but we have no engagement with our community. Yeah. I think I shared this with you yesterday when we kind of got together for a quick chat. Yeah. But you know, I had a friend, a congregant at our church, passed away yesterday at the age of 39. He was diagnosed with brain surgery at the age of 12 and went in for a procedure on Friday and went into coma and passed away. And it was, there was some grieving going on in our community. But this guy, I mean, when people ask me the question, do you think it's possible for a person to change the world? I say yes, and I think about someone like this guy. His name was Chad. And by changing the world, I don't think it always means you have to start your own company, your own nonprofit. I don't think it means that we have to do something earth-shaking or cosmic in some ways. I think it really begins with being kind and generous in our simple, daily, mundane things. Yeah. So when news spread that this guy was passing away, was in coma, just to give you an impact, his mailman started to cry. His mailman in his neighborhood. It's a 39-year-old gentleman, Chad. And so I think about that as we're wanting to change the world, we can begin here.
Absolutely.
We can begin here.
Yeah, and I think for us too, people have challenged us, and okay, why are you helping build water projects in West Africa, East Africa, Laos, Myanmar, and quite honestly, the reality is there's clean water in the U.S. You go into a restaurant and there's tap water and you can drink it. So that's part of it. But also with our bike program, we are giving domestically, and it's interesting because there are these needs domestically as well. But it also, like, even before that, so it's like we have international giving, domestic giving, but before that, like you talked about, just being a decent human being. Yeah. I mean, that alone, I think could have, could you imagine taking that into the 2007 or 16 or whatever political season is coming in like 3 years, because they're already starting now. But just the amount of civility, if people did that every single day, I think that's world changing in and of itself without that.
Absolutely. I think it was Mother Teresa who said that if you want to change the world, start with the person right next to you. So that would be a little awkward at this point, but it's basically, yes, looking around your community and needs.
Yeah, just buy the person on your right a beer and we'll be good to go. I think, and that's kind of like a good transition point too. Kind of like, how do we interact as a community? I think I'd be curious to know your thoughts on kind of like social enterprise and where it's going and how it's doing. And a goal, we've been talking internally a lot about this, is that as a brand, there's impact from purchase, right? But our goal, and quite honestly, why we're here in the flagship store having MiiR Live and having events here, is that we want to move beyond just transaction. We want to move from transaction to interaction. And the reason we want to do that is we want to have these conversations with you guys, bring you into what we're doing, inform you all, but also that, again, moving away from that notion that you have to buy something to change the world, and that we can be a vehicle for change, but then there's also next steps that we can do as a brand. And I think that's something we're trying to, we're launching our new website soon. There's going to be tools on there that support One Day's Wages, because we don't want you to think that the only way that you can give clean water is by buying a bottle. No, go to One Day's Wages, donate money, donate 1 day's of wages of your salary. And then in addition, here at the store, I think when we looked at retail, and there's quite a few members of our team here, when we actually sat down and said, what does a retail store look like for the MiiR brand? That's why we're serving coffee and beer and having community and having people come in here. And it's great. Every day that I'm here, there's meetings happening, there's transactions for sure, but there's also that deeper, I think, hopefully, civility that's happening, and that engagement, I think, is so important for social enterprise to not miss out on. And I guess I'm not really asking you a question, but more pontificating on social enterprise. But I mean, what are your thoughts more on the nonprofit side of what could be improved?
Well, you said something, during this good presidential speech that you just gave. But I think it's worth repeating for you. You said it's not about transaction, it's about interaction. Yeah. So if I can flip the tables here a little bit, because I think that's worth gold right there. Yeah. Just maybe share with me, because it's one of the first times I've heard you say that phrase. Tell me a little bit about why that's important for MiiR.
Yeah.
Because you guys are going from online presence to real life now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're in lots of stores, and the growth is crazy. And it's I think for us why it's important is it's not like we're trying to dodge the reality that like a product changes someone's life, but also I think there's a deeper meaning as a brand, and you know, whether it's like a roundabout way of trying to be authentic, like we're not trying to do it to be authentic, we're just doing it because we think it's the right thing to do. But I think the reason that true interaction is important, not only to build a brand, but like as a person who starts a company, like I want to do that. So part of it is just, you know, I think it's part of how I was raised, part of my experiences. And honestly, I think it's something that if more companies started to think in that way, more change would happen. It's not just like, oh, how can you like give at the bottom line, or how can you give 1% of profits back, or you know, whatever people are doing, but it's how do we actually interact? And I think, you know, kind of like trying to distill that why it's important for MiiR. I think it's important because I don't want to be known as a brand that said the only way to change the world is to buy more stuff. Like that's something I'm very against. So it's a way. It's not like it's to counteract it, but it's to make it be a part of the brand where we host community events. And we engage, so that's kind of
the reason why I was
less
really
presidential version of your.
Well, the reason why I was really intrigued by it was because part of one of our mottos at One Day's Wages is that it's about you, me, us, and them.
Yeah, I love that.
That we're all kind of in it together.
Yep.
And by you, me, us, and them, it's not just us Westerners helping other people. There's as much for me to learn from others as vice versa. There's interaction, relationship. You know, when I think about the clothes that I'm wearing, you know, I have to consider the fact that there was a real human being on the other end of the chain that was making the clothes that I wear. And again, that should fascinate us and maybe even disturb us in some way, that it's not always about how do I get what I want as cheaply as I want, because it makes us the center of the universe, if you will. Now, I know we're in Fremont, and for those who are watching online, they probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but Fremont basically messages itself as the center of the universe. And I think that is the epitome, and I'm not criticizing Fremont, sorry Fremont, but I'm basically critiquing this notion that if we're not careful, it becomes about us. So I would say, of course, you guys are a business. You asked about my thoughts about social entrepreneurship and business. So you're a company, you have certain values and principles. If your sole principle is, how do I make as much money as possible at all costs, then I would say it's dangerous because it places you at the center. But if interactivity says, how do we do good stuff? So I told you this many times before, we would not have partnered with you if we thought your product could not compete in the larger market. You know, because it's the same thing as a nonprofit. If we're starting a nonprofit and our integrity, our design, our engagement with people, if it can't compete with other people, well, eventually people won't have trust in what we're doing.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, we're wanting people to know, we're wanting to encourage people to be sharper, wiser, deeper, investors and engagers in philanthropy, which is the reason why things like transparency, integrity, you can come online at One Day's Wages and you'll see our financial reports, you'll know exactly where our money is going. Every single grant project that we engage in is published. We explain why and how, and at times when things don't work out as well as we'd like for it to.
Yeah, and that's hats off to you guys for actually like putting that out there, because most people don't even like report to that depth, you know? And then I think, you know, the 100% model is something that I'm fascinated by, and it's one of those things where I'm like, how do you guys do this? And you guys figure it out. I love it. It's just one of those things where it's like 2 staff, but then there's this army of volunteers, and and I think that goes back to this you, me, us, and them, and I think that's something that we're trying to improve upon on our website as well, is that, again, it's not like you buy a product and that's the only thing. Like MiiR is the only way that someone gets a bike. It's our nonprofit partners who have volunteers, who have people distributing bikes that aren't used anymore, and then us helping financially to replace those pieces. So it's very much about the community of people interacting together.
I will say this because it's possible that someone might be asking that question, like how do you operate when 100% go into projects? And you know, I think it's important for me to say it's not the only way that nonprofits should work. In fact, if you're a savvy a savvy person who understands business or nonprofit, you know that a healthy nonprofit is going to have overhead. It's just truth.
It's the reality.
Yeah, it's just a reality. For us, we wanted to kind of respond to the fact that, particularly among young people, there's an increasing sense of cynicism. People aren't quite sure. So we wanted to eradicate that by simply saying 100% minus credit card fees are going to go towards projects that you choose or that you give our board authority to make decisions where it's going to go. But what we do is that through our board, they continue to give on a regular basis, and then we host that one event, the gala that here in Seattle, where it's the one fundraising event that we do for ourselves. And we're able to make it work, and able to make it work in such a way that I think it's really encouraged and inspired a lot of people. A few years ago, we've had New York Times, NPR, really fascinated by this story, if you will. And I know that there are so many organizations that are doing incredible work. And so it's an honor for us to collaborate with them. And again, One Day's Wages is just simply one response. And I hope that people will check it out. But if not, they would simply say, you know what, I should support the nonprofit org that I like. The one that I retweeted or Instagrammed or I liked on the Facebook. I would say, go deep. Express your deep commitment to them in the months and years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's going to be a cost, whether it's financial, but taking it further. Beck and I have kind of a family mantra, so to speak, and it's take it further. It's something that I think applies in the world of tweets and Facebook posts, and there's this massively moving culture is that to kind of reduce, simplify, and to go deeper. And I think personally, I think it's a better way to live. It's a much more difficult way, trying to edit out all these activities and being like, okay, I'm only going to focus on skiing and it's definitely a challenge. I'd love to ask some audience if you guys have any questions. We've taken a couple questions online, but does anybody have any questions for Eugene about One Day's Wages, MiiR, social enterprise, or you guys can take a moment and think, and we could take a quick 2-second break. But anybody have any questions? We've got one. We've got two. All right. Jill, you good? Good. The mic is on. All right.
The mic is on.
Sweet.
Hi, Eugene. What's the future of One Day's Wages?
Dun, dun, dun. The way you asked it was so ominous. This sounds really not strategically wise. But to be honest with you, when people ask those kinds of questions, we don't have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan. And we want to do what we're doing, and we just want to go deep. We want to do it more thoughtfully, more regularly, more faithfully. We want to continue our convictions about transparency. Obviously, we want to grow. And by growing, it doesn't necessarily mean we want more staff and get our own offices. The last few years, we've been on free rent because people have heard about our story, our limited budget, and they've opened up their office space to us. And so we've been doing that now for 4 years, I think. But we're wanting to continue to inspire people to be generous, not just with One Day's Wages, but just to kind of see themselves as philanthropists. That's probably one of our biggest commitments for me, is I want the average person to see themselves as a philanthropist. So one of our models is, you don't have to be a rock star, a billionaire, or a celebrity to make a difference. Because in our culture, we have this obsession of thinking that it has to be these sorts of people that make a difference. And the reality is, every single one of us here, when you consider that 80% of the world make less than $10 a day, we literally here in this room are the 1% of the world. My salary puts me in the top 0.86 percentile of wealth in the world. And so how do we inspire people to see themselves as philanthropists and then not just like the idea, but do it? And so we obviously want more people to join our movement. We want to be able to do more projects and partnerships with people around the world. And you know this, but just in case others might not, We partner with a lot of people, but our specialty, our forte is we want to partner with small NGOs, small CBOs. CBO stands for community-based organizations that don't have a large marketing budget or a budget at all, but they're doing some amazing work around the world. And so right now, to give you an example, I mean, we did a partnership with an organization called Sahar, and what they do is, I mean, it's intense. They help female teachers in Afghanistan go to places for training because it's so dangerous for these female teachers to go get training, because it's illegal for girls to go to school, and it's illegal for women teachers, if you will. And so I think we issued a $8,000-9,000 grant, and it simply helps safe transport of female teachers to go to remote places for training and education, because we believe education really matters. We're in the midst of a campaign of wanting to raise $500,000 for Syria and Iraq Relief Fund to engage some of the migrant refugee crisis as well. So in response to the question, you know, what does the future look like? I would say it's what we're doing now. We want to do it well, deeper, with as much integrity and transparency, and continue to, I think, exemplify that.
Lots of life jackets as well.
Yes, life jackets in Myanmar. And maybe you could introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Yeah. Should I walk over there?
Wherever, yeah, you can talk there.
I'm Nick.
Okay.
Nice to meet you guys. I like what you said before about people not having to be rock stars or billionaires. A lot of us here are students, particularly UW students, and unfortunately, you know, some of the contributions that do have to be made to nonprofits like these are financial.
Yep.
How can students get really involved? How can we connect the communities of the universities and nonprofits in the Seattle area and worldwide to help, you know, contribute to this effort?
Yeah. It's a great question. It's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I know that there's UW students, SPU students, SU students nearby here. A couple things that I would say. So at one day's wages, you're right. You know, sometimes the truth is when we see something happening around the world, we go to our closet and go, I want to send these used shoes over there. And let me just say right now, don't send your used stuff overseas, please. All right, where's the camera? I'm looking at the person right now who's thinking about this. Don't do it, because it's probably one of the worst things that we can do. And oftentimes, financial resources are really important. Now, I understand we may be limited in our seasons of life. At One Day's Wages, one of the things that we encourage people is to donate their birthday once a year. So on your birthday, you can start a birthday campaign. You know, you've done that, your wife Becca has done it, and it takes 5 minutes to start your own page on our website, and you ask your friends and family, in lieu of gifts and cards or whatever it might be, would you give $10 to my campaign for Syria or for Clean Water Fund? And the reason why that's important is you're not only helping us raise valuable resources, you're really, I think, helping share the story that we can make a difference around the world, and it's making an impact. We've seen students do creative things like run marathons, do biking things, throw parties, whatever it might be. So another thing that I would say is, what does it mean to build a relationship with an organization? So it's not a one-time transactional thing. This is probably the big X factor amongst nonprofits. It's really, you visit a site once a year during a catastrophe, you give $10, $20 because you're moved by what you see, and when it's all said and done, it's merely a transactional thing. I would challenge you, whether it's One Day's Wages or someone else, like build a relationship with them. Stay committed to them during college, after college, hear their stories, read their stories. A lot of people are working really hard to write stories about their work and about the impact that they're making, local heroes. As you're encouraged or inspired, share those stories with others. And there might come a time post-graduation when you're working at the MiiR flagship and you're getting paid $85,000, you know.
It's 70,000, I think, is the bar. We're not going to exceed that.
And I would say you may have opportunities later to be able to be more generous with your finances. But I look at it as time, talent, and treasures, right? Not just financial resources, your time, how do you volunteer? You know, one of my favorite nonprofits here in Seattle, if I can plug other people, is Union Gospel Mission. I love what they do. And every Wednesday night, they have a group of people that walk around the city of Seattle, engaging in dignified relationships with people, hearing people's stories, the homeless people in Seattle. And what does it mean to share your gifts, your talents that you may have? So those are the three things I would suggest.
Thanks, Eugene.
Yep.
Yeah, great question. And that, yeah, getting involved, I think getting involved early, regardless of how much money or time that you can give, I think just that first step is so important, because once you take that first step, then it's easier as you come into a job and have more money to be able to give some of that away. Whereas if you hold it all close your entire life, it almost traps you the further you go on in life. So if you're thinking about it now, that's awesome. Any other questions from the yeah?
Hello, my name is Kate, and this is the first time I've actually heard about One Day's Wages, and I'm truly inspired, so this is pretty awesome. I actually work with kids with special needs here in Seattle, both physical disabilities and mental disabilities, so I'm curious about your work with that population around the world, specifically in developing countries, because as you probably know and are aware, people and children with physical and mental disabilities are pretty much viewed as less than human, and they have a harder time contributing to a family and a community. So I'm just curious about any projects you have going on or thoughts.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the work that you do. And since we're online, I'd love to maybe even, do you want to share the org or the company or that you work with right now? Because I'd love for people even to just even share it.
I work with a great organization called the Seattle Public Schools.
All right. Yes. Seattle Public Schools. All right. Yes. I think it's fitting for us to pause for a second and say we appreciate our teachers, our educators. I don't know about him, but I was on your side. All right? No, seriously.
We don't have kids. Come on.
It's really interesting because I have a dear friend who just retired from 34 years from the Seattle Public School as a special needs teacher, 34 years. And she said it was one of the most meaningful things that she's ever done, but she also shared it was the most difficult thing that she's ever done. Like she come home from work and she has to spend an hour just decompressing physically, emotionally. And so without going too much into kind of your experience, because it's new to me in part, the way that One Day's Wages works is that we have people who seek after us. And so we receive grants from anywhere and everywhere. And we're a small foundation, right? When you compare us to the Bill Gates Foundation or World Vision or whatever it might be, we're a small organization. But our partnerships happens as a result of people seeking us out. So we receive tons of applications. And just for full disclosure, we end up saying no to about 99% of applications that come in. And part of it is because we feel that money can do horrible things. And so we have to find good partners that share our values. And so there are a few partnerships that we've had in recent years that have been about how do we empower, come alongside, particularly children who've been, as you said, seen as other than because of their health issues, because of physical disability issues. One project that comes to my mind right now is just working with an HIV/AIDS community in Thailand. And so we help them purchase land and then to help with what we call tilapia fish ponds, so that they're able to not just receive things, but learn skill sets to be able to, again, help themselves. Easier said than done, but that will be a classic example of kind of our value system, is how do we encourage people to lift themselves out of poverty.
Awesome. Tilapia fish, who knew? The fish aren't hashtagging though, that's great. They're just doing their thing. The last thing I'd love to touch on before we kind of mingle and there's tacos outside and beer, we can all hang out and have more great conversations is, you know, for us, we're making this step to education and kind of, you know, we focus on clean water with our bottles, bikes with our bikes, and then our new bag line is focusing on education. I think what I get excited about education is that it's expansive over the world. It's an issue in Seattle, it's in San Francisco, it's in Myanmar, it's in Liberia. How do you guys, and you know, full disclosure, One Day's Wages is our, you know, I guess giving partner for the education projects.
Yeah.
How important do you think education is? And not necessarily it's like, you know, this is P1, this is P2, but like, can you give a little insight into like why education is so important, especially in developing countries with people who are on that $1.25 or less?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we have to even look very far, and you kind of mentioned this here. Like, in my opinion, education is one of those things that I don't think we need to argue about its importance.
Yeah.
There might be some things in development that can be politicized, that engenders a lot of heated conversations of how you go about doing it. Bottom line, whether it's here, there, or everywhere, we all agree education matters. It matters for young people, it matters for women. When you realize the illiteracy rate around the world, and 2/3 being girls and women, I'm not saying that it's the ultimate game changer, because I think that's dangerous conversation.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about not just helping someone out of a situation, but wanting to create opportunities for them to be able to envision a brighter future, I can't imagine education not being part of it.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's numerous aspects of education. There's uniforms, there's textbooks, there's tuition. I never thought that we would be investing in a partnership that pays for a van and gas and security to help Afghani female teachers get there, but there's numerous aspects to it.
Yeah.
You know, maybe even just to kind of hack Nelson Mandela, who says that education is the greatest weapon against poverty in our world today. And I think we see it. We see it everywhere. And so I'm thrilled that you guys are choosing to continue your partnership with us through education, because it is so important. And I love the fact that you hold it with loose hands. You're not saying you can only use it for uniforms or textbooks, but we have to, again, realize in different contexts and different cultures, it's going to look different for different folks, and we have to kind of come with loose hands as Westerners, if you will.
Absolutely. And I think that concept is how it's informing how we market our bags too. You know, we kind of go round and round because people want to know, like, what does this bag exactly do? Like, who is it giving to? And to think about the amount of resources that would be wasted to like take a photograph of every single child and like know that this, you know, bag is helping this kid. You know, from a marketing standpoint, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. But the reality is, it's not responsible for a company to say that this bag is going to give another backpack. You know, and so we've kind of moved towards, with the messaging of the bag, this broader vision that this bag will help empower access to education, and then, you know, committing with the transparency of showing the people the projects that we partner with you guys on, because I think, like you said, there's so many different ways to help with education, both domestically and internationally.
Now, I know this is kind of new news to me. I've heard about it. So when is that happening? Like, when are the bags happening?
So thank you for that quick promo. We have an awesome video that I'm so excited about that we're going to show you guys.
I'm serious. I was genuinely curious when we'll be getting a check for our education fund.
Hopefully soon. So in kind of true MiiR fashion, and this is something that's kind of just evolved with our brand, is that we have crowdfunded a ton of our projects. So when I came back from Liberia and thought, you know, let's get into bikes, when people thought I was crazy, and rightfully so, we kind of pulled a bunny out of the hat on that one, and we came to our 40 closest friends and said, hey, will you pay $1,000 and we'll hand number each bike, you know, so like, you know, mom got one, dad got two, and so on and so forth. So we kind of crowdfunded there. We did our tumblers on, I think, Indiegogo. We did our flagship store on Kickstarter, and it wasn't hey, the store is happening without you guys. It was, hey, let's make this better. And we did that. And so kind of in true MiiR fashion, we're coming to our community saying, hey, we have these bags ready. We're about to pull the trigger. We need your help. Commit to us and help us make this a reality. And that's something that, again, it allows us to kind of engage our community, and it's really kind of, I love it, because it's a unique way to be a part of a brand and be a part of an experience that's exclusive to the people that kind of back us early. So yeah, let's check out this video. It's I didn't make it, and I'm glad, because they spent a lot of time.
Design is a powerful thing. It can distract or disappear, hinder or heighten, intrude or innovate. Design is an opportunity to empower. It's an invitation to experience a better day, a bigger journey, a brighter future. We design to simplify, to adapt and go where you go, to withstand time and all of its stories. And we believe good design is far bigger than ourselves.
In 5 years, we've created bottles to sustain communities with clean water from 43 water projects. We've given over 3,000 bicycles to mobilize families. And now we're designing bags to educate future generations. Bags to encourage your leisure, your adrenaline, your ambitions, and to empower students with education. We are MiiR, and we design to empower.
Our marketing team killed it. At least I think so. Yeah.
Right?
So yeah, you guys can all be a part of it. You can get on to MiiR.com/education, back the bag project. We'd love your support. We'd really appreciate it. Yeah, wrapping up. We're gonna choose some winners on the interwebs, and we will get out to you guys the books. Jill, who's managing the medias, will. Do you have the winners? Let's see.
I have 3 of them, yes.
Awesome. We will ping you guys on not the Instagrams, the Twitters, and let you guys know who has won, and we'll get your mailing addresses and get those prizes out. We have a couple here for you guys who asked questions. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions? Or anything else you want to say? Just, you know.
Well, again, if I can just maybe a couple things I'll say. One,
Yeah.
Thank you again. I know I said it earlier, but I want people online here to just hear it directly from me. Thank you so much for your friendship, for your support. $150,000 is a huge putting your money where your mouth is. So thank you for that. And I would just say for those that are watching here or online, please do check us out at onedayswages.org, and maybe even that challenge. Would you consider donating your birthday to One Day's Wages this upcoming year? It would make a significant impact, and I think it would be a huge thing even just for yourself. Will be impacted by that. Our gala is coming up on October 23rd. We'd love for people to come out. It's actually free. We are encouraging people to consider making a donation at the event, but you can go on our website. And then lastly, I would just say, go Hawks.
Yeah. we need it.
Yeah.
All right. So people want to follow you on the internet. You're at Eugene
I'm at
Cho.
Eugene Cho on Twitter. On Instagram, it's Seattle Jedi Knight. My son's name is Jedi, and I'm not kidding. And people can also find me on Facebook.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, audience, for being so good. There are tacos and beer waiting. So again, thank you guys for coming out tonight. And until next time. Woo! Thank you. That's good.